Hello and welcome back to Brain Dump. So this time on Brain Dump, we're very fortunate to have the legendary Neil Kelly. Now, Neil Kelly, if you don't know, is the former undefeated Midlands, English, British and Commonwealth light heavyweight professional full contact kickboxing champion. Neil is also a hugely successful coach, coaching his own team from Birmingham, the USKA, but also he's been an England coach for the ICO team. He's also helped me with my last 3 world champs as well. So I'm just going to drop you straight in it. Without further ado, here's Neil Kelly. Hello and welcome. You're listening to
Brain Dump.
This is a podcast where we talk about life from the meaningful to the extreme. You're going to Morocco Thursday?
Yeah, heading off. A well-earned break. Day I had a day off before we broke up at the weekend was about 6 weeks ago.
Mad.
I think every day, day and night, every weekend, sometimes 2 competitions on the same day, split squad. Crazy, man. Hey, but I suppose better to be too busy than too quiet, yeah?
No, it's true. It's true. I can relate to that. First of all, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So, Neil, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Birmingham, an area in Birmingham called Hall Green Moseley, which was a nice area at the time. Yeah.
And so when did you first get involved in martial arts and why, and sort of how old were you?
Well, about 11 years old, just turned 11, and a friend of mine at school said, I've just started at a karate club. I was a bit boisterous as a kid, and I was going, how good's karate? Karate, you don't need karate. And I said, look, I can do karate. And I threw my leg up in the air and ended up on my back. I thought to myself, yeah, we'll go and have a look at this karate club. And the karate club, my friend, his uncle was teaching the class.
Okay.
A guy called Andrew Hennessy, which you're familiar with yourself.
Course. Yeah.
And from the first class, I was just hooked. I wasn't very sporty at school, had no interest in sports, athletics, anything like that. But I don't know, there was something about the martial art that had me hooked from the very first class.
What kind of motivated you to stick to it?
I mean, I'm a great believer that everybody has got a niche. Everybody will find their calling and everybody will find their place. And some people it's football, some people it's cricket, some people it's outside of the sporting arena, music. With me, like I say, I had no interest in any other sports. There was something about martial arts. And I think the fact that I went onto the class and I was really bad. I was all started, I didn't know my left from my right, my up from my down. There's probably around 20 kids on the class and I was the worst one of them. Because I was always striving to be better and to climb the ladder kind of thing. I think that kept me involved like that, pursuit of perfection kind of thing. Yeah, just the physicality of punching and kicking and getting punched and kicked. I just loved it.
Well, I can understand that. And do you think because you weren't the strongest in the class to begin with, that was a sort of motivating factor, not necessarily being a natural in the beginning?
Yeah, no doubt at all. I mean, you get some kids, obviously I'm an instructor now, and you get some kids on the class and they're just naturals. You show them something once and they've got it. You needed to show me 100 times before I had a vague idea of how to do it, and then I need to practice it another 1,000 times before it got half decent. So with me, it was always a case of, I want to be better than him. And, I think coming in last and perseverance, a lot can be said for that because it does keep you interested. Whereas if you are a natural and you get things easily, it's like, right, done that, on to the next thing.
Competitiveness is of something that's obviously quite pronounced in you. And so do you think, again, that was something that you had before martial arts, or was that sort of encouraged because of martial arts?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I noticed it before martial arts, but certainly as soon as I started martial arts, I wanted to be the best, and like a dream at the start because I was the worst. So aspiring to be the best, but whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. I entered many competitions and come dead last. I entered probably 6 or 7 competitions before I got my first bronze medal. Obviously I've been doing it a long time, but I say I'm very competitive by nature. But I think you've got to be the best at anything. You've got to be.
And when did you start competing and why?
Pretty much off the bat, 11, 12 years old. Competition martial arts was massive. We're talking in the 1985, 1986. you'd go to a competition and there'd be like 40 people in your category. You know, the category would start at 10 o'clock in the morning. It'd still be running at like 2 in the afternoon. You'd get like 7-8 fights to get to the final. It was really competitive. Everybody was doing it. Yeah, and it just appealed to me, appealed to me pitting myself and my skills against other people's. It just appealed to me from the get-go. So, yes, right off the bat, I was competing.
So you mentioned that you started in karate. So when did you sort of transition into kickboxing, or did it kind of like develop over time?
Well, the style that I started in was a martial art called USKA, which was a modern karate, which is kickboxing. So it's full contact karate. So kickboxing wasn't as widely a used term back in the 80s. It was all contact karate or freestyle karate. Yeah, the things that I was learning on that very first class in 1986 are still the things that I'm teaching on my classes today. So a few different martial arts over the years, taekwondo, kung fu, but my heart was always in kickboxing, definitely.
And this is probably an impossible question, but do you know how many amateur fights you think you had?
Oh, geez. Yeah, we used to compete like every Saturday, every Sunday. Like I say, you could have up to like 8-9 fights each day. I remember I used to count the trophies that I had, like my first places, my second places, my third places, but never counted the fights. But it must have been up nearly like, I don't know, probably 1,000 maybe. I don't. Lots and lots of fights, lots and lots back in the day.
When did you decide to go pro, and was this a tough decision?
Not really. Probably, I had my first professional fight at 17. The amateur career was basically the tournament circuit. It's different today. There is an amateur circuit that you can go on. You make the transition into professional. But yeah, from the tournament circuit that we were on, it was a case of let's step up now. Let's go into gala fights, evening shows. And the first one I remember was just turned 17, and it couldn't come soon enough for me. I just couldn't wait to get into the ring and do what all the people, like the fighters in my club, were doing. All the aspirations the inspiration, should I say, that were in our club at the time, and they were fighting full contact, and it was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So straight into the deep end with professional full contact. Yeah.
Oh, see, I love watching back your highlight reel. It's one of my favourite little clips you have, and particularly your little celebration with the spin to landing in the splits is
yeah. That was my little trademark back in the day. Jump spin kick to splits.
Yeah,
but yeah, couldn't do it these days. No, I would never get back up.
And so, what weight did you fight at?
I started my career at super middleweight, which was 75 kilos. I won Midland, English, British titles at super middleweight, and then I stepped up to light heavy, which was minus 81 kilos, and pretty much seen the rest of my professional career out at light heavy.
Oh, cool. And did you find did you cut weights, or was it just sort of that's what you walked around at?
I'd probably drop a stone and a half for every fight. So it was like, I didn't fight, I think because I was teaching full time, I didn't fight as much as what I should have or could have.
Okay.
And it's like every time I fought, I'd probably fight twice a year, and it was a big event and it was a big build up, but I would need to drop a stone and a half every time I fought. In hindsight, maybe I needed to be a little bit more active and, not get so much weight in between each fight, and maybe I would have stayed in the sport a little bit longer. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the cutting is quite possibly the hardest part, including sort of the cutting aspect of prep. How did you go into a fight in a competition? Was there like a particular procedure, or what was your sort of mindset going into training and things?
The thing is, we're talking, I finished my career in 2000, my professional career in 2002. And around that time, the knowledge wasn't there in terms of the dieting and weight cutting, and so with me it was just graft. And probably a lot of the training that I was doing at the time was being detrimental. It wasn't helping me. It was pretty brutal, in terms of just not eating a lot and training really, really hard. And I think the fighters today are a lot more equipped and they're a lot more prepared for battle. But with me, literally just hard work, lots of running, lots of training, lots of sparring, and that winner's mindset, eat, sleep, kickboxing, repeat. That's pretty much eight weeks training camp, and sacrificing social life and family life and everything else just for that one goal to get your hand raised on fight night.
Yeah, and did you find all that hard? As you mentioned, sacrificing social life and all that sort of. Is that something that you found difficult to deal with, or was it just your goal was fighting?
I think it was difficult, but you weigh up what you want, and you have to weigh up what you're going to do to get that. And this is something that I try to put over to my students now. It's like it boils down to what you're prepared to do, what your opponent isn't prepared to do. And that gives you the strong mindset to do what you need to do in training camp. And also on the night, when it gets a little bit sticky on the night, or you have to go to war on the night, having that mindset to know that, you've been there and you've done that in training camp and you're equipped for whatever your opponent brings to the table. So yeah, it was difficult. But everything that's worth getting in life is difficult. It's not plain sailing, is it?
Is there a particular aspect of being a fighter that you find the hardest in your career in general?
With me, I think it was probably the weight making.
Okay.
I felt on a few occasions that I was training to make weight and not training to fight. And that's not productive. Myself as a coach, I wish that I was my coach when I was fighting. You approach things with a more level head. For my last probably 5 or 6 professional fights, I trained myself pretty much. So I had nobody steering me in the right direction or cracking the whip. I had good people around me, but ultimately I was the man that said what I wanted to do and when I wanted to do it. Remember in my last fight, one of my friends, could see I was struggling in training camp with the motivation and the weight making, and he said, "Flex, just take 3 or 4 days off." And I needed to hear that from somebody else for me to realise, 4 days isn't going to kill me. 3 or 4 days isn't going to kill me. And then my 3 or 4 days back, and then I was chomping at the bit to get back at it again. And you need good people around you, you need good people around you telling you the right thing at the right time.
Sometimes I find myself seeking permission to take a break, and it's a funny psychological thing that I've sort of found myself getting into at times, and it's interesting hearing that you're very similar. You mentioned sort of, the guys around you and those training, and particularly with fighters, you have a very sort of family orientated group of people around you. Sort of who were those people? And
yeah, I mean, in my early career, I had Andrew Hennessy steering me, and then we parted ways. We've always remained friends and now family. But yeah, when I went to do my own thing and I was out on my own, I pretty much trained alongside my own fighters. One fighter in particular, Philip Richards, who was an amazing fighter, who was like king of the welterweights back in the 90s. He had a really flamboyant style and out of the box kind of style, fighting with his hands down. He was very Prince Nassim Hamed-esque. He was an incredible fighter, and I drawed a lot of inspiration from him. And although a lot of the time we were training alongside each other for fights, I would listen to him probably more than anybody else in my corner. Very educated eye, and also he's got a skill set that I haven't got. Skill set and a knowledge base from years and years of experience. That when he talks, you listen. Probably he was the main guy. Although he was my student, he was also my instructor. He was instrumental in my last couple of fights in getting the strategy right and getting the victories, yeah.
It's phenomenal that you say that. It's interesting that you can learn just as much from a student as you can a coach. Do you have a particular highlight in your career that you hold, close to your heart?
Probably my professional Commonwealth title. Training camp wasn't plain sailing. It was a tough training camp. And I was getting to the stage where I was juggling full-time teaching with, professional fighting. I was finding it difficult. About midway through that training camp, I thought, this is my last one. I've got to get through this one. I've got to win this one by hook or by crook. And then I'm going to hang up my gloves because probably the motivation isn't there anymore for circumstances, because obviously other commitments. I think when I got my hand raised for that one, it was probably the highlight of my fighting career. In terms of my martial arts career, different story, because I consider myself to be a much better coach than I ever was a fighter.
Interesting. Okay.
I thought I was a good fighter, not a great fighter, good fighter. I believe that some of the students that I've got now are great fighters. I feel like my forte is bringing out the best in them.
Was that hard? Was that hard giving up the sort of fighting career?
At the time, no. I was ready to hang up the gloves. over the years, the years after that, it's like, should I do it again? Could I do it again? And I made a comeback in 2011 just for World Championships, light continuous in the ring, just to see if I could do it again. But there was an itch that I needed to scratch, and I probably enjoyed my training so much more for those World Championships than I ever did for my professional fights, because I suppose the knowledge was there then. I think if I had the mind I have now and the physicality I had then, I would have been an amazing fighter. But it doesn't happen like that sometimes.
No. Yeah, life isn't that easy. So do you have any memorable fights that are, particularly hold a place for you, and why?
Probably the toughest fight and my favourite fight was against a fighter called John Shields. An amazing fighter from Banbury. I've got a lot of respect for John. And at the time, he was just going through everyone in the light heavyweight division, destroying them. A very big hitter, very strong fighter. I was fighting him for his English title. I was challenging him for his English title. And even my friends were saying, he's going to knock you out. He's going to knock you out. Like, okay, we'll see. And then I remember picking up an injury in training camp on my right shin. In terms of my armory, my right round kick to body was one of my strongest kicks. And I picked up an injury to the point where I couldn't shin kick. So my instructor, stroke student, Philip Richards, he said to me, well, let's try going back to the old light continuous days, the point side, and go right side forward and use your lead leg as a side kick rather than a rear leg straight leg. And that was the first time that I'd ever switch hitted in a fight. Okay. Like between orthodox and southpaw. And it was just like by accident, I found my style, switching between stances, fighting with my hands down, a little bit more unorthodox, a little bit mobile. And I think that was the first time that I thought that it all came together. A really good performance against a really strong opponent. And it was a very good victory. I enjoyed that. And I fought very good fighters. That was the one that I enjoyed the most.
It's interesting you say that, because every time I've seen you, that switching, that fluidity is the Neil Kelly that I know. And then watching, your highlight reel, there's a different animal, and it's like you fine-tuned the weaponry now, and that was really cool to see.
Evolution though, isn't it? I mean, no fighter is the finished product. You have to go through journeys and steps, and you need to work out what type of fight you are and what works for you. That was the first fight that it clicked with me, but then every fight after that, shin injury or not, that's what I'd run with. And then it's strange because when I come back to the light continuous in 2011, it was all just like experimenting, because it wasn't so serious. I didn't take it very seriously. I took the training seriously, but the fighting, it was like, oh, well, let's see if I can fight with my hands down, and let's see if I can, taunt him with sticking my chin out, and let's see if I can, all right, so that's going well, so let's see if you can do that a little bit closer. Or let's back yourself up to the ropes, let's see what you can do on the ropes. It was just an experimentation of pushing the realms of what you're in control of in the ring. So that was fun. I enjoyed my comeback in 2011 and onwards. I enjoyed World Championships and I enjoyed the training. I don't think I really enjoyed my professional career. It was a chore, it was hard. And there's a lot of things I would have done differently about my professional career, but not so much about the light continuous comeback. I think I had fun with that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And you can tell you're having fun. Whenever I've ever seen you do the light con, you can tell that there's I don't know how to say, but like a cheekiness to the way you fight. And I think that is, you in a nutshell, I think sometimes.
The thing about the light continuous, I mean, when I was fighting, I was like, it was all for me. I was selfish. And then when I come back for the light continuous, I had a lot of students that had never seen me fight. And like they were kind of watching to see what I was going to do. So as well as fighting, it was also performing, so it's like you got to put on a show for people. If people have heard about like you were a half decent fighter back in the day, and then if they watch you and they go, oh, is that all he's about? So you have to put on a show for people as well, and be flamboyant without being arrogant or without, overstepping the mark with the showboating. But yeah, putting on a show was important to me as well.
And did you ever find that, expectation on your shoulders, that kind of pressure, was that ever difficult to deal with?
Maybe for the comeback in 2011, the first one, I used to think to myself, well, you think you can do it. and in the gym you're looking okay, but what if you get in there and it all goes pear-shaped? And what if people look at you and, like, if they've heard about you as a fighter, and then they watch you in the flesh and they think, he's all right. I think you can damage your reputation, if you go on too long, or if you don't prepare correctly. So probably anticipation in the first one back, but apart from that, no, I think I always cope well with pressure. And I think when you put in the work in the training camp, a fighter's mindset is not about if I win or not. My pressure was that self-pressure is just, are you going to be happy with your performance when you win? A fighter can't allow himself to think about losing, although sometimes it happens. But a fighter in training camp can't think about losing. He's got to be thinking everything in his psyche, and has got to be about win no matter what.
Have you had any low moments in your career?
Yeah, a few injuries. Didn't have to deal with defeat much, which is a good thing when I hit my stride. I think I'd done all my losing early on in my career. Got used to it, and so no, I think I've had a good run as a fighter. A few disappointments, obviously, with fighters. When they don't get the decision that they're looking for, or they don't get the win that they've been working so hard for. But you got to appreciate it's sport, and there's winners and there's losers, and that's what happens sometimes. So no, on the whole, it's been pretty on the upside.
I remember in, I think it was 2014 or 2013, the Unified World Champs, and you were in the final, and we were warming up together, and you told me that you were a follower of Islam, and as a result, you were saying that your destiny was already laid out in front of you. And this really took me aback. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Do you think your faith has played a role in your kickboxing career, or is this something that
I found Islam in 2001, 2002, which was right at the end of my professional career. I think Islam plays a part in everything in life. Obviously with me, because I'm a Muslim, and we as Muslims believe that everything is pre-written. Your book is already written, and you can't change anything in that book. It is how it is. You have to be accepting of good things and bad things. Anything that comes we believe is all from Allah. It's all from God. So when you go into a fight and you've prepared well, and you've put your all into your preparation, if you don't get the decision, or you don't get the result that you're looking for, your faith tells you it's okay, because Allah's got a better plan for me, or he's going to teach me a lesson from this loss that will improve me in the future, So yeah, that's just a life thing. I don't think that's a kickboxing thing. That's just a life, just to be accepting of your destiny and to not dwell on things too much and just allow things to be.
No, I remember it just sticking in my mind, because I remember you were going into this fight and you hadn't lost in 20 years. And I remember thinking, that would cripple me, that kind of pressure. But you were so cool about it. And yeah, it was really impressive, I'll be honest. Now you're a coach. And when did you start coaching?
Started full-time coaching at 16 years old. Pretty much straight from school. I remember covering a couple of classes for my instructor. I was covering his classes because he had an accident. He had an accident at work and sliced open his arm. And as a result, he couldn't teach. So I was covering his classes, and then it got about like 2 or 3 months down the line, and he just said, you know what? You're doing a good job with him. You just have that class. And it was like, wow, yeah, I like this. Started a full-time gym at probably 19 years old. And been teaching ever since. Yeah, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full-time gyms. Yeah, over the years, over the 30 years I've been teaching.
Because obviously you're going to get people who are just there for a bit of fitness, and then people who are hardcore fighters who want to, win titles. Is it tough getting that kind of balance?
It is. I mean, people are how they are. Some people have got the appetite for just real hard work and, graft, and then other people will be watching the clock, to see what they can get out of the gym. But I do find that hard work is contagious. The mentality of a good fight team, everybody starts to bounce off each other. And even if you aren't of that mindset, if you're training around people that are of that mindset, they kind of carry you along with them. Hard work is contagious, and that's what we try. That's the vibe that we try and create in the gym all the time. But I think that if you haven't got that mindset, at some point you're going to get found out. And it's a case of, you might be good enough, which is your natural skill set, the work that you're putting in. You might be good enough to beat 90% of the people that are out there. But is that good enough? You know, you want to beat everybody that's put in front of you. You want to find a way to beat everybody that's put in front of you.
When you look at all the fighters that come out of your club, there is a bulletproof sort of persona that I think everyone has, and it is, you know, it's feared. It is feared in the kickboxing community for sure. Do you think kickboxing is evolving as a sport?
Probably not.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, probably not. I think it's stood still for many years, and I think it's a great product. There's nothing wrong with the product. I think there's something wrong with the people within the sport and their mentalities, and it's so fragmented. Nobody seems to want to work together, and at an association level, everybody wants to be the best and nobody wants to pull people with them, kind of thing. I think we need to have a united front. I mean, we as an association, USKA, we go to all the governing bodies championships. There's nobody that we won't attend a competition because it's a certain amount, certain initials, or we just want to be the best. I think the sport, there's a lot of people that are just happy with being the best in a small area, you know, in their own little bubble. And it's a false victory, or it's a false sense of success, isn't it? It's only you're the best in that very small area. I think to put yourself against everybody else in the country, then you can say you're number one. So yeah, unfortunately, I think that kickboxing, it needs something. I don't quite know what it needs, but it needs something to bring it out of the slump that it's in.
I find that if I'm ever explaining kickboxing to sort of outsiders, this fragmentation is something that is always a bit of a hurdle. It's always like you have to explain the different associations and the different connections. And you're right, sometimes it is just a bit political. Like at the end of the day, we want to create the best fighters rather than any kind of, you know, animosity between people.
I think the associations, I mean, they differ even in like what is a professional world kickboxing champion? Is it someone that fights 12 2-minute rounds? Or is it that fights 5 3-minute rounds? Or is it somebody fights without their foot and shin pads on? Or is it somebody... We can't even get it right on like a base level, and just the rules. I mean, in boxing, the rules are what they are. Whether it's WBC, IBF, WBO, IBO, it's always 12 2-minute rounds, you know, the unified rules of boxing. In kickboxing, it's like, right, what rules are we fighting today? Well, we're fighting kickboxing, okay, but what rules are they? Are you allowing this? Are you allowing that? You know, I think we've got to try and come together on an association level. You know, it sounds like such an easy fix, but we've been saying it for many, many years, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. It doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, thank you, Neil. Honestly, it was an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that we finally got this conversation. Before you go, how can people find you, find the club, like how people get involved in kickboxing, sort of?
Well, we're based in Birmingham at the USKA Fight Factory. The website is www.uskakickboxing.co.uk. So you can find us there. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this from all over the country. So we'd advise you to go onto Google, find a reputable kickboxing club, shop around, look around, maybe try out a couple of different clubs and find out where the best fit for you is. I mean, there's as many different martial arts as there are people. Definitely shop around, make sure that everything feels right, everything looks right, do your research, and try and get into martial arts, because martial arts is such a wonderful thing on so many different levels. Whether you want to be a world champion or you just want to, you know, increase your well-being, your health and your well-being, martial arts is perfect for that. So
brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome, Connor. It's been great speaking to you.
Brilliant. All right, well, thanks, mate, and have a lovely time in Morocco.
I will do, and have a good Christmas and New Year, and hopefully catch up with you in the New Year.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Brain Dump, first one of 2020. Really good one. Kelly's a really interesting guy. And another big thank you to Monty for editing the episode once again. Really appreciate the support he's provided me. All right, till the next time. See ya!